Hello everyone, this will be the second chapter of The Second Life of the Guardian, written and read by Insect Overlord. This chapter is titled, Why Are My Hands So Small? The first thing Marinette felt was pain. It shouldn't hurt this much to breathe, she idly thought as her body screamed. She wasn't in control of herself. Her body screamed without her telling it to. Her hands balled into fists and swung around. Well, this is strange. Quite the healthy lungs on him, someone said. She passively noted the language wasn't French. What language it was, though, she couldn't tell. While being guardian granted her the ability to understand all languages, it sadly didn't tell her which languages were which. The next thing she knew, she was placed on something soft and warm, and she heard soft murmuring in her ear. Though her lungs still ached a bit, she started to calm down and drift off to the comforting warmth. She felt something be placed in her mouth, and she reflexively began to suck. Not bad. Tastes kind of good, actually. Congratulations on the healthy birth, Midoriya-kun. The voice spoke up again. Birth? Marinette was confused. It must have been hard to give birth with Marinette screaming in the background. She ought to give the family a gift basket. Come to think of it, why was Marinette screaming anyways? Why did her lungs hurt, and why couldn't she control her body? She opened her eyes to look around, but everything was blurry as hell. What was going on? It took 2 days for Marinette to realize that she was in the body of a newborn infant. It explained a lot, actually. Her lungs hurt that first day because her body had literally never breathed before, and she couldn't see anything besides blobs of not color because the only sense babies were born with fully functioning is hearing. She also learned her new name, Izuku. She kind of liked the sound of it. It took 3 days for her to realize the implications of suddenly being a newborn infant. Don't blame her. The processing speed of newborns is really slow. She must have reincarnated somehow. The last thing she remembers before her newfound babyhood is an Akuma attack, but it gets a little blurry after that. She assumes she died. She feels like that should upset her more than it does. Her days as an infant are boring as hell. She sleeps, eats, and pees. She hates having a wet diaper and wishes her parents would potty train her already. She knows it's possible to potty train babies. Her maman potty trained her when she was 6 months. It just takes a bit of work. The feeling of a wet diaper on her skin, much less a soiled one, makes her want to rip off her nails out of pure sensory ick. She almost feels bad for her new mom with how much it makes her scream. Almost. Something else she learns is that she's reincarnated into a male body. Marinette knows that just being in a male body doesn't make her a boy, but she wouldn't mind if she was. Something she never got to explore in her last life is her gender. She started questioning it when she was 13, but by that time she was neck-deep in the chaos that was Hawkmoth's reign. She didn't have the mental capacity to add gender questioning onto her plate. She never felt uncomfortable, per se, about being referred to as a girl, but she would sometimes daydream about living her life as a boy. She only mentioned it once in passing to Tiki, who asked what pronouns she would like to go by. She had told Tiki that she didn't really care. She didn't feel especially connected to either gender, mostly apathetic. But now that she was given the chance to live her life as a boy, she was strangely excited. Marinette smiled through her musings, catching the attention of her mother, who gasped and cooed at her. Izuku was 6 months old when he finally noticed his vision start to get better. He could see his mother's face when she smiled and talked to him, and he smiled and babbled back. He had to make a conscious effort not to just talk to his mom, because babies weren't supposed to do that. He was 7 months old, still getting used to his newfound improved vision, when he saw his mom do something peculiar. Izuku was sitting in his exercise saucer, watching his mom cook from across the room, when she suddenly held out her hand and a wooden spoon flew into it. Izuku was so confused, he accidentally let out a "what the F" in French. Luckily, his mom didn't know any French and just assumed he was babbling again. While his mom cooked and talked to Izuku, he was going through an internal crisis. What had he just seen? Did his mom have a Miraculous? She didn't look to be transformed, and he didn't see any Kwami nearby. How had she moved that spoon? He was brought out of his confused spiral by his dad coming through the door. Izuku didn't like his dad very much. Hisashi Midoriya didn't seem like a bad person. In fact, he was a picture of a loving partner and doting parent. But Izuku could feel something off about him. Something corrupt. and Izuku had learned to trust his instincts. So, Izuku made sure to cry every time he saw his dad. Hisashi tried everything to make Izuku like him, from buying him toys to telling him stories to insisting on being the one to feed him. "Don't take it personally," his mom had told him, swaying side to side, comforting Izuku as he sniffled after he threw a toy Hisashi got him in his face. "Sometimes babies just don't like certain people. It's nothing against you specifically. I'm sure he'll warm up to you eventually." His dad pouted. That night, Izuku's mom spoke softly to him while laying him in his crib for the night. "Izuku, baby, please stop crying any time you see your father." She sounded so tired. Izuku knew how that felt. "I don't know what's gotten into you. You're usually so sociable. You like Mitsuki, and she's a lot louder than Hisashi." Izuku knew his mother wasn't expecting him to understand her. He was only 9 months old, after all. But Izuku recognized the weariness between her brows as the same one he carried in his last life. He loved his mom. He didn't want her to feel like that. For a moment, he forgot he was supposed to be an infant. He looked up at his mother's eyes with an understanding that shouldn't be on a child's face, and nodded. His mother blinked. She rubbed her eyes, and when she looked down, it was to see her child's face, eyes closed and asleep. Izuku learned later that he wasn't hallucinating. His mom really did use some sort of power. Apparently, these powers were widespread, too, and known as quirks. He learned that quirks could come in all shapes and forms. There was even ones that changed how a person looked, called heteromorphic-type quirks. At least, according to the TV his mom sometimes left on in the living room. Now, Izuku didn't know a lot about normal child development. Sure, he used to babysit Manon, but she was 6 years old, not a toddler like Izuku. So Izuku didn't know exactly when he should start walking or talking. He decided to take cues from Katsuki, his mom's best friend's son. When Katsuki started babbling, Izuku started babbling. When Katsuki started crawling, Izuku started crawling. And if his mom ever talked about him missing a milestone where he could hear, he was quick to do whatever it was. When Katsuki was just under a year old, he said his first words. Izuku heard their moms talking about it on a phone call in the other room and decided it was time he started talking too. He didn't really know what to say, since he didn't have any siblings as Marinette or even know any infants. He decided to improvise. Babies weren't supposed to know many words, so maybe just a short sentence? Yeah, that sounded about right. "Mama," Izuku called across the room from his spot in the playpen. "I'm hungry." His sentence was punctuated by a growl from his stomach. His mom dropped her phone. Was that a bad choice of words? Babies knew about feeling hungry, right? His mom rushed across the room. "Izuku, baby, what did you just say?" Izuku didn't repeat himself. Clearly he did something wrong. Maybe Katsuki was an outlier, and babies weren't supposed to talk this early. He decided to let his mom think she heard him wrong, and started babbling nonsense happily. Across the room, a muffled, "Inko? Inko, is something wrong?" could be heard from the discarded phone. His mom looked a bit ruffled and confused, but slowly walked back to her phone, never taking her eyes off Izuku. She picked it up, and after a drawn-out breath, told Mitsuki, "This might sound crazy, but I thought I heard Izuku tell me he's hungry." He couldn't hear Mitsuki's reply, but it caused Izuku to laugh. Yeah, maybe. They quickly picked up their conversation as if nothing had happened. This concludes Chapter 2 of The Second Life of the Guardian. Hope you guys like this one. Thank you so much for listening.